Hi, I'm Tony Nichols, and welcome to Chamber Chat. Welcome to Chamber Chat, a program put together by the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce to keep you informed of what's going on in your community and in your chamber. The first guest on this edition of Chamber Chat is Dave Ryan, Executive Director of SWED. Welcome to Chamber Chat, Dave.
Thank you, Tony. Great to be here.
I think this might be, you've done many of these types of programs over the years, but I think this might be your first visit to Chamber Chat.
Probably the first visit. And
yeah, we're going to have to.
Hopefully not the last.
I hope we cleaned up for you and made you feel welcome.
It's always a warm atmosphere here.
Well, let's start with a question that you've been asked many times over the years. If there may be 9 people left in Wicomico County that doesn't know what SWED is.
Okay.
Can you give us a little overview of what SWED is?
Yeah, sure. SWED we're a nonprofit corporation. We founded in 1968. We're charged with strengthening our local economy by attracting new jobs and investment to the area, and by retaining and growing the existing job base we have. We've been at it almost 48 years, and we've stayed pretty true to that mission. We target those industries and those companies that import dollars into our community. So it's kind of like the other side of tourism. Mm-hmm. We help all businesses, and we invite all businesses to contact us on how we can help their particular business. So along the way, we're looking for some diversity, so we're less dependent upon any one particular company, any one particular industry for economic viability. So it's been a great organization for 4 or 5 decades now. But we don't operate in a silo. We seek partnerships throughout the community, throughout the state of Maryland, and the country. The Chamber and BBSI has been a great, terrific partner of SWED, and we hope we reciprocate. But we have a small organization, but our wingspan is fairly broad thanks to those partnerships.
Yeah, it certainly is broad, and the reputation precedes SWED. But ironically, I was founded in 1968 as well. And I have...
that doesn't mean you were born in 1968, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it means. But over the years, so now how long have you been the executive director of SWED?
I've been here a little over 22 years now.
Yeah, 22 years.
Yeah.
You might say you've been there a while. Over 22 years, and certainly over 4, almost 5 decades. What kind of changes have you seen, prior to you joining SWED, and then certainly over the last 22 years since you've been a part of SWED?
Yeah, sure. We've seen, I think, Tony, that the largest change we've seen, and I think if you ask most people, they may see this, is a change from an industrial-based economy to a more service sector-based economy. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that play out in our community, we've seen that play out in the state of Maryland, and we've seen that play out in our country. And we're getting to a point where you have some folks who say, I wish we could go back to those days where we had production in factories and those good paying jobs with benefits. And then you have another side that says, those days are gone. It's a new normal. So let's go out the entrepreneurship route. Let's seek new technologies, new innovations. And I would suggest it's not an either or proposition. It's going to be different today and 10 years from today. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. We're blessed. About 8% of our job base is in manufacturing. It's almost a mirror image of that in the United States. Maryland's not necessarily known as a high manufacturing-oriented state, but we mirror the country in a very large way. That being said, we've seen great changes in that industrial base. Remember the textile plants in the 1970s here, Gant and D&S and Manhattan Shirt. Then the cluster developed in the defense industries in the 80s. With Grumman came to town, K&L Microwave Blossom, Maytech came to town. Electronics and the microwave sector fueled some growth in the 90s, and perhaps life science today with the growth of Jubilant Cadista Pharmaceuticals or Trinity, Steros, Zoetis, and Tishcon Corporation. So we've seen great changes, but I think that transition from it, and it's been very challenging. From an industrial base to a service sector based has been the largest change that I've seen.
You know, we're rebounding, if you will, from the largest economic downturn since the Great Depression.
Sure.
You know, I've always heard in the 12 years that I've been on the shore, I've always heard and seen where the shore has been over the years kind of shielded from the peaks on the extremes, but also shielded from the very low valleys. I have found that to be true, but what are your thoughts on that, and how do you see us pulling out of this recovery?
Yeah. Well, I think it's this past Great Recession, as we call it, has been a tale of two time frames for us in Wicomico County and the lower shore as a whole. Prior to the recession, we were growing jobs at a far, far greater rate than the nation or the state of Maryland. As we talked about and illustrated during the past chamber forecast, that curve was a very steep curve in terms of job creation for us here in Wicomico. That being said, those jobs being created were in virtually all economic sectors, largely driven by the construction and the professional business services. So, you know, prior to the run-up to the start of the official recession, we were getting jobs in the construction. These are contractors, wall trimmers, pavers, roofers, HVAC pros, those type of occupations. In the professional business services, these are architects, engineers, surveyors, paralegals, mortgage brokers, real estate folks, things like that, all tied really to that residential construction market. So I think as a rural area, and probably most rural areas are more dependent upon residential construction than perhaps the metropolitan areas. So those same forces that helped us going into the recession, you know, hurt coming out of the recession, and I think that's what we're seeing. So the recovery for us, one, because we had a higher yield curve going into the recession, we had a longer way to go down, and two, the reliance on the residential construction market. So the yield curve coming out of the recession has been much flatter. So if it seems like it's been a very sluggish, slower recovery than the state of Maryland or the country, it's likely because it has been for us. Now, that being said, recent trends, we're seeing a higher level of employment, we're seeing more job creation, we're seeing more business formations, we're seeing strong sales of residential homes. In the next phase, hopefully, we'll see some price points increasing on the average home price and median home price, and that gets us you know, back into a stronger growth mode.
You pulled out your crystal ball just a little bit then, but that's the next question. Pulling out your crystal ball, what do you think, how does the economic future look for the shore? And how do we grow that economic base again?
You know, I'm from Salisbury, and I think it's the greatest in Wicomico. I think it's the greatest community on earth. I just don't know if I could sell any other community. It's just a great privilege to be able to do that. So I think the future is tremendous. We've had challenges before. This is a community that can overcome challenges, and we will overcome the next 4 or 5 years in terms of the continued transition of our economy. We can do 4 things, Tony. We can continue to attract. As I alluded to earlier, nothing lasts forever. So we saw an industrial-based change from textiles to defense to electronics to life science. We have to continue to attract. Attrition will occur, and we have to replace those jobs. Second thing we can do is work with our existing business base, which is perhaps the most important thing we can do, because most businesses next year will likely generate 75–80%, a very significant portion of their revenue from companies or customers they already have. Right. As a correlation, most communities will generate most of their new jobs next year from companies that exist in the marketplace today. So it's imperative upon us to pay attention to that business base that's already here. The third thing we can do, and as you know very, very well at BBSI, is to let's fill the jobs we have open today. Sure. There are jobs out there, albeit different than they were 20 years, 30, 40 years ago, but there are jobs. So how can we, not just me and not just you, but collectively as a community, and let's elevate that conversation. How can we connect people that want to work with the job openings that are available? And better yet, how can we give those people or equip those people with the skill sets that are demanded by industry today? The fourth thing we can do is let's grow our own organically.
Right.
If there ever was an entrepreneurial community at Salisbury, all 4 schools of the university here, so
Right.
SU, are endowed by a private individual or an entrepreneur. Think of the microwave sector that grew. We can trace the roots right back to the founding of K&L Microwave in the early 70s. They were all startup companies. Think of the spin-offs from the founding of Purdue Farms in 1920. Think of all the spin-offs over the years. What would we look like had that not happened? So entrepreneurship, and look no further than SU. Look at the business plan competitions. There's hundreds of new business plans being presented each year by students and entrepreneurs throughout the Mid-Atlantic area. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that are generated and invested in these new business ventures. We saw the Radcliffe Foundation. We've got Shore Hatchery. We've got Bernstein. Shark Tank came 2 years in a row. It's a terrific time for entrepreneurship, new innovation, and new business formation. So I think going forward, it doesn't have to be an either-or proposition, but entrepreneurship is a key component to driving us in the future.
I'm getting the hook in terms of time, but I do have one question that I've always wanted to ask you. With all the businesses that you talk to and the people that you talk to from across the country that talk about moving to the area, or living in the area, or even opening a business in the area, what is it that makes the Salisbury-Wicomico area so easy for you to sell?
If there's one, and there's a myriad of factors,
Sure.
but if there was one, I would say fabric of community. Let's create an environment where people want to live. Let's create an environment where people want to work. And that, more than any other. Typical site search starts at a regional level. Corporate real estate people, they're going to find a building that meets their needs, and throughout the Mid-Atlantic region,
Right.
say, they're going to find multiple sites. I promise you. It's then that the decision making goes to the all-important quality of life
Sure.
factors. Okay, if I move to this community, if I start here, what kind of environment will I be living in? Where will my kids go to school? What kind of recreational opportunities are there? What kind of house can I afford? What's the diversity of the community like? Those type of questions. So the fabric of community, it's always been that, Tony, and I think it's going to continue to be that for a long time to come. Fortunately, we're a terrific community. We're a very organized, we're a very charitable community. It's a terrific place to live.
I couldn't echo those thoughts any better myself. So, Dave, thanks so much for joining us on Chamber Chat, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
We'd like to give you an opportunity now to take a look at the upcoming events with the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome back to Chamber Chat right here on PAC 14. Joining us now is a good friend of mine and business owner, Chris Eccleston, owner of Delmarva Veteran Builders. Chris, welcome to Chamber Chat, man.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We're going to talk about veterans. But first and foremost, I have a question for you. When you started your business, why was it important for you to make veterans a priority in that business?
I personally believe that it would, the results would prove them for themselves. Veteran unemployment always has trended higher. I knew that the workforce and just the skills and the training and everything that goes along with the word veteran, there's so much more of that. It's bigger. There's a lot of characteristics involved, and I just knew that those type of people working on my team, or having a team of those type of people, would make us, a real player in the industry here locally.
Well, true to form, you're probably not going to say it, but I will. You're a veteran yourself.
I am,
too.
yes.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So yeah, that probably was there's a bit of a kindred spirit there as well, I would think. You mentioned unemployment and why is it that veteran unemployment, in your opinion, trends higher, to use your words, than the typical unemployment rate?
So the national, current stats right now, the national unemployment rate is about 5%. Maryland unemployment rate is about 5.3%, and the national veteran unemployment rate is about 5.4%. So it does trend higher both on the national and state level. I'm not sure that there's a whole, there's probably a whole list of reasons why that is, but I would say the biggest one is there's the disconnect typically between the employer and the employee. So there's a skill set that's developed in the military, whatever branch you're in, that is sometimes hard to educate employers on what that is. And then, there's keywords and phrases and all of those kinds of things that we use in the military while you're in that people just don't understand and don't know what that means.
I've heard some of those things.
Yeah, they don't understand. So there's and then I think, a lot of times when you get back, if you've been deployed, you can struggle with some of the mundane things that you have in the civilian world that you don't deal with, and that can flounder some people.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so once you get past that, with the increased veteran unemployment, what do you feel is important for business owners to know about the benefits of hiring a veteran?
So anytime I get a stage or a platform, I say that if you're not hiring vets, you're not doing the right thing. And I believe that our company is proving that here locally by leaps and bounds. But I will say that, just the one word synonym of a veteran, in my opinion, would be honor or integrity.
Okay.
So that's number one. Every person that serves or wears the uniform has honor or integrity. So those kinds of skills that you have, then you have the mindset of not knowing how to fail, accomplishing the task at all ends. Leadership. Leadership is, just something that's instilled from day one as soon as you put the uniform on. Performance under pressure. I mean, those are all things that you have a well-rounded individual, and then again, you go back to that honor and integrity thing at the top, and you're just like, wow, why wouldn't I want people like that working for my organization or company? And then the last thing that kind of ties it all together is you don't do anything in the military by yourself.
Right.
You're in a team, and all of your team members depend on one of each other.
Sure.
So that to me is you're in the BBSI world. Those characteristics, in my opinion, are 80% of the hiring somebody.
Well, that goes a long way. And one of the things that you said, anytime I'm asked to speak about leadership or I write something about leadership, almost 100% of the time I bring up the military. Because it's in the military, in my opinion, and unfortunately, that's one of, if I have a regret, it's not I don't lose sleep over it, but not joining the military. That would have been to me a very significant thing to put on your resume. But leadership, people that are veterans that have been in the military tend to understand that leadership is earned.
Oh yeah.
And not bestowed upon because you read a book, and thereby those employees understand the necessity of going in and through hard work earn their right for the promotion and the pay raises. I think that's a big piece that people might misunderstand about the qualities of being a veteran.
Sure. Yeah. Duty, chain of command, those things are naturally instilled.
Yeah. So there are a lot of organizations that help veterans.
Sure.
Everybody thinks of American Legion and those kinds of things. I mean, those are the first things. But here locally, what are some organizations that, if people wanted to get involved in or reach out to, or just start attending functions, what are some of those organizations that people could plug into?
So I would say number one, the top of mind is Operation We Care.
Sure.
And Jeff Merritt does a great job. They do all kinds of packing parties. We've teamed up with them to do wheelchair ramps and all that kind of stuff. There's also a group that is housed under the Community Foundation called the Lower Shore Veterans Network.
Okay.
They meet on a monthly basis. And they have all kinds of opportunities for veterans or somebody that just wants to help any type of veterans. And they are the group that organizes the stand downs and all that kind of stuff that are housed at the VFW or the American Legion. So I would encourage somebody to reach out to the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore.
Okay, that ties into my last question for you. And you talked about these groups, but for the average everyday person that really doesn't know, they don't know how to get involved. They don't know what that first step is to do. What would you tell them to do to get involved?
To get involved, I think Nike has it the best way than I could ever do it. It's just do it. Right. I think that is the biggest problem sometimes with the community service aspect. Personally, I'm a big believer in community and being involved. But if you put 1 hour a week into whatever the environment, to the school system, to mentoring, to helping veterans, whatever. I mean, just the pride that would be built in this community would be unbelievable. And you were talking about economic development with SWED earlier. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of those things just tie in, and it would just make this community just blossom, and everybody would be proud.
I couldn't agree with you more. Chris, thanks for joining us on Chamber Chat. Chris Eccleston with Delmarva Veteran Builders, bringing honor to veterans and to our community. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'd like to give you another opportunity now to take a look at the upcoming events with the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome back to Chamber Chat right here on PAT 14. With us now is Andrea Berstler, no stranger to the Chamber Chat program, the Executive Director for Wicomico County Libraries. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
We're not here to talk about the library this time.
I know, surprising, isn't it? I'll figure out a way to get it in there, don't worry.
Well, I just did for you, so there you go. We're here to talk about the YAY program. Mm-hmm. We've had Kim Gillis, the chairperson-elect for the Chamber, to come on, and she and Sophia Smecker are co-chairing that
Correct.
program to tell us about it. But now that it's kicked off, you have a pretty big role in that. So before I start asking you about that, with all the things that you have going on, because I don't know who goes to more events, me or you, but I see you with all of them. So you've got a lot of stuff going on. Why say yes when you're approached to get involved with something like this? Why? You got enough to do.
I couldn't say no. I looked at this program, and as a former educator and someone who really believes that the entrepreneur model is the business model of the future, mm-hmm. Both for profit and nonprofit, the opportunity to get involved and to contribute, however small, what knowledge I've gained over the years in helping these kids take their first steps in perhaps starting their own business was just way too enticing and way too exciting. And so when the opportunity came up to be an instructor, I thought, oh, this is going to be fun, and it has been. There really hasn't been as much work as there has been enjoyment and the opportunity to get to meet some of these kids who I think will be the next set of business leaders for this community.
Well, that's a good reason. I can see how you could have easily given up an extra hour of your free time and only get to sleep
time, huh?
and only get to sleep 7 hours a night rather than not get involved. So tell us in your words, mm-hmm. what is the YAY program?
The YAY program, the Young Entrepreneurs Program, is an opportunity for middle school, high school students to take that first venture into possibly creating a business. Mm-hmm. What it does is it takes these kids, a lot of them came with ideas. Some of them developed their ideas in the first classes. And they come up with their business plan. And the goal of the whole 30 weeks, I guess it is for them to develop a solid business plan mm-hmm. and then pitch it to potential investors. Mm-hmm. And what I'm enjoying about it is this learning process, which is, as I said, as a former educator, mm-hmm. I find very exciting. This education, this process of them learning and experiencing mm-hmm. and developing their skills and their personalities in all of these different unique projects that they're doing.
So how many kids?
24.
24. I knew that answer. I never asked
Testing me? Yep.
never asked a question you don't know the answer to. So what is your role as the first instructor? So you're, you're the guinea pig. By the way, the first instructor. What is your role? What are some of the things that if you had to do over again, you do different? But what is it that you're doing with these kids?
What I'm doing is I'm giving them an introduction to business. Okay. We're doing an awful lot. I have a history of strategic planning. I have a history of doing that kind of work with businesses. And what I'm really doing with them is walking them through an initial strategic plan for their business. Okay. Think about the business. How do you take an idea? How do you make it a reality? What are your long-term goals? What do you see at the end of this? What kind of steps do we need to set up so you can get to that goal? And that's what I'm doing. I'm working with them one-on-one to help them stay grounded, because some of them have some really far-out ideas that they're not quite ready to try and tackle yet. So we're trying to bring them back down to earth a bit. But it's an exciting group, and I'll be real anxious to see what happens at the end when we have the trade show and they put out their business ideas to the community. Well,
it's out of the minds of children like this, or like these kids, that you wind up going from a concept of a computer that ran Windows 95, just to give everybody, a mind's eye view of what I'm saying there. You remember the discs that you had to load.
Oh, absolutely.
To buying a phone and having it pre-installed, and your phone is faster than the computer that ran Windows 95. Well, so it's out of that mindset that these kids are going to bring things that we've never thought of.
Absolutely, and these are digital natives. This is a really neat thing, because they think differently, their brains are actually wired differently, and it's sort of like, the computer we grew up with, the one that NASA used to send the men to the moon, took up rooms and rooms and rooms. The phones we carry around now are more powerful than that computer was, and these kids are kind of like that. They have their leaps and bounds in their understanding of technology. Not all the businesses are technologically based, though, and that's what I find really interesting. A lot of them are service-based, or they're practical products, things that when they pitch the ideas in the class, everybody said, wow, that was a really good idea. Why hasn't anybody thought of this before? So they run the scope of being very practical, very down-to-earth, very realistic, all the way up to very technologically based and cutting edge.
So what have they been working on so far, if you can get in the weeds with that a little bit?
They've been doing a bunch of different things. I've got a couple that want to come up with a product-based company, people that want to do a pet starter box, or a special cell phone cover, and those kind of things. We've got ones that want to develop apps for tracking things, for finding lost things. I have one that wants to build a robot that will help you find lost things, which I could so sign up for. If you can't find it, you can send the robot, and the robot will find it for you. It's got trackers on it. We've got a range of them, and the really interesting thing is the range of ages that go along with. We have everything from 7th grade to 12th grade in this class, and it's interesting to watch them work together. It's interesting to watch the dynamic, and they help each other, and they challenge each other. But really what people should do is come out on April 30th to the trade show and see which businesses finally come out at the end, to see what these kids have accomplished.
So what's ahead in the next few weeks for these kids as they move through this process?
They'll be meeting with their mentors, which business leaders in the community who have signed up for this. They'll be meeting with some legal advisors to help them actually draw up the paperwork to create their business on paper. This is a real business. This is not a mock business. They'll be meeting with accountants to help them develop the bookkeeping and record keeping for their businesses. Those are the next 3 or 4 weeks. And as they do this, they'll be filling in this business plan all along. Then they meet with marketing people. They'll be meeting with web developers who will help them build a website. They'll be meeting with graphic designers who will help them build logos. Oh, wow. And it really is kind of a mini incubator for this high school program to help them get their businesses going.
Well, I hope out of this process they develop a product or an app or something that will help you have the ability to never lose scissors or tape while wrapping a present. I think that would be the $1 million
Very
idea.
useful, absolutely, especially this time of year.
That's right. Andrea, thank you so much for coming in and giving us an update on Yay.
You're very welcome, Tony.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Chamber Chat. As always, if you've missed a portion of this show or you'd like to view previous editions of Chamber Chat, we'd encourage you to visit the Chamber's website or PAC 14's website and you utilize their on-demand function. That's about all the time we have for this edition of Chamber Chat. My name's Tony Nichols, encouraging you to make a difference.